It's just that it's a lot harder path than people are letting on. Because today people are sort of like, drop an LLM on top of your data warehouse and just let the insights flow. And it's complete baloney. It's bullshit. It's just bullshit. It doesn't work like that.
And I think, Michael, karma might have caught up with you, because I believe that makes you the quintessential AI analyst.
Don't you dare. Okay, revenue is down for paid search, and it's actually related to this. Otherwise, it's the classic, the guy searching for his keys under the streetlight, and they ask him, well, where did you drop them? I think it's over there. Well, why are you searching under this? Because that's where the streetlight is. Well, the AI has no choice but to search under the streetlight. So if you only give it light in one area, it cannot search anywhere else. It has no knowledge.
Welcome to Knowledge Distillation, where we explore the rise of the AI analyst. I'm your host, Catherine Ryband, CEO and founder of Ask Why. After talking with Marty Kine about the strategic aspects of the rise of the AI analyst, with Mike Driscoll about the technical evolution of data tooling, and with Shomik Ghosh about the investor's point of view on tech hype cycles and how they affect role creation in general, but in analytics in particular, today we're going to the front lines. I'm very excited about this because at heart, I'm an analyst, so this is about the practitioner. Because while executives strategize and engineers build and VC make bets, there's a group of people who actually work with this stuff in their organizations, for their clients, and just generally in their day-to-day work. So there could be no one better, in my opinion, to open the practitioner track of knowledge distillation than Michael Helbling. Michael, you need no introduction. I'm still going to try, though. So here it is. You've been in analytics for over 20 years. You started in the trenches with the first web analytics tools when there were no user guides and we were all on Yahoo groups trying to help each other understand what is a tag. And then you built analytics programs, both as a consultant, as a practitioner. You are a co-founding co-host of the #1 explicit analytics podcast, the Analytics Power Hour. Although, as we discussed, you guys need to work a little harder on keeping that explicit rating these days. So It's been running, as you just told me, 11 years, not 10 years. So tell us a bit about the Analytics Power Hour.
Yeah, I'm as shocked as you are to realize that it's been 11 years, but it's been an amazing journey. And it's very interesting to see how that what we've talked about on the show, what we cover on the show has transitioned over the years into different topics. And actually I kind of look at that year over year. And of course this year, just topically dominated by AI. So this conversation, I think, is also very timely as well.
That is really fascinating because, I told you this, but I'm going to say this again. The Analytics Power Hour, and you in particular, are partially responsible for me going back into building a company and going back to analytics because I found myself during the pandemic just wanting to reconnect to analytics and just to listen, and found the Analytics Power Hour, which I wasn't listening before to the Analytics Power Hour. I just literally discovered because it was the #1, actually the #1 podcast on analytics, explicit or not. And so I started listening to it and I found myself, laughing by myself like an idiot at your jokes and thinking, oh my God, these are my people. I need this back in my life. And then I proceeded on to listen to every episode from the beginning because I was like, oh, this is actually an incredible historical document. And it really is absolutely, I really highly recommend it to anybody who's got, the time and the willingness. It's a fascinating exercise to go through all of these years of evolution and to see how the industry really has changed and has evolved. And yes, lately, obviously AI and the thinking around AI.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in our first few episodes, we were covering topics like what is an analyst job and what is a dashboard and, all those kinds of things. And now we're revisiting a lot of those things, but in a new context, right? So it's kind of fun to sort of see the journey and the evolution. And of course, we're all facing sort of an AI evolution of our industries and fields right now. So I think it's always fresh there, right? There's not a lack of things to talk about, which is, crazy to me because like you'd think after 10, 11 years of doing a show every couple of weeks, you'd run out of topics. But we don't. So
You
yeah.
don't. You definitely don't.
Yeah.
And Tim will never run out of rants. That
Yeah,
like
that's right.
that's not gonna happen. So you're a managing partner and the founder of Stack Analytics,
Mhm.
a consultancy. You help companies solve most of their data challenges. What type of companies do you usually work with? How does that translate into analytics workflows? What is it like specifically within the vast domain of analytics that you actually focus on?
Yeah, no, great question. So at Stacked Analytics, we primarily work with C-level executives in primarily B2B e-commerce and B2B SaaS in verticals. And we work first at the data strategy level and then down into execution, primarily in digital and product analytics use cases. So, um, you know, my background is in digital analytics, and so that's kind of where most of my expertise and work has been over the last 20 years. So I try to keep it focused there, and I find that there's an amazing sweet spot of challenges as well as needs for that particular group of companies. And so we have a good partnership with our clients on that level. And then more and more, we're getting into the AI strategy and execution piece of that, right? Just because that's what the industry needs.
And what does that mean, AI strategy and execution?
Well, so I mean, it's what we're going to talk about for the whole rest of
Hmm.
this episode, right? Because it's basically the first thing I noticed was that as soon as AI started to kind of come to the forefront, right, in 2023 into 2024, I started noticing like all these LinkedIn job descriptions that used to be sort of a head of data and analytics or director of analytics and governance or whatever. All of a sudden, AI just started getting tacked onto the end of it. So it's sort of now it's head of analytics and AI, head of data strategy and AI, head of data governance and AI. So AI just sort of got sort of tagged onto the data roles that leaders were being asked to fulfill.
All the roles got AI augmented,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
use the
Now,
lingo.
now, what does that mean? Well, drill down into every single company and
Mhm.
you'll find a different answer everywhere. However, it just shows that, okay, well, I do analytics. I work with executives on analytics. That is the question at the forefront of their minds. Well, then we need to be in a place to help advise where to go. So first, you've got data, you want to use that data effectively. And at Stacked Analytics, kind of our purpose is to drive the closure of the data to value gap, right? That's always been what we've been about. Companies have believed in and invested in data for years and years and years. There's a big gap between that investment and the value derivation that it typically occurs for a lot of companies for lots and lots of different reasons. Well, AI potentially could change that, but there's a lot of hurdles to overcome and I'm sure we'll talk about it. So,
So right now, you're at the epicenter of the rise of the AI analyst, right? From all fronts, working with clients who are trying to figure out, if LLMs are magic or just expensive autocompletes. You're also one of the early adopters of Ask Why Prism, but also of a whole bunch of other tools. This is really something you and I have in common is we're sort of both like tinkerers, right? Curious minds, and we like to try everything that's cool, and we just, like to play with new stuff. And so what was your first aha moment with AI? Like, was it in the context of analytics? Like I really mean like not generally AI, right?
Yeah,
AI.
yeah.
Well, no, actually, generally AI, and then specifically in the context of analytics. And how did that happen for you?
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, honestly, when ChatGPT 3 came out, it was such a shockwave for everybody. And then, like you said, like I'm always kind of tinkering. It's my favorite way to procrastinate is, try things out or play with new tools or whatever. So, of course, I'm in there day one, just sort of checking it out. And the first thing was sort of trying out different content or text generation types of ideas, like have it write a poem or have it do this, or it was back in the early days of ChatGPT 3. Like we were just all blown away that it could write a rhyming limerick, for instance. Like, wow,
Yes.
oh my gosh. And so that was probably the first aha moment of like, okay, this is different than anything else I've seen that called itself AI before. That was sort of like, okay, there's something to this that is actually a shift in what we've seen technologically in terms of LLMs or computer reasoning. And that was kind of like the first one. I would say for analytics, that aha was probably a little earlier this year. I had a client where we needed to connect a somewhat obscure CRM to a larger data project. And so typically in that environment, you've got to go digging through, finding documentation, figuring out how their API works, all these different things. Like someone has to go do the research, spend the time. It's a
Yeah.
time consuming and it's
Boring.
doable. Well, I mean, it's just a thing you've got to do.
Yeah.
Since I'm not super technical, historically, I would have to take that task, package it up, and hand it off to a more technical data engineer slash analytics engineer who has more facility with, tools like Postman and API calls and those kinds of things. But instead, I sat down with an LLM, typed in like, here's what I'm trying to do. And within probably less than an hour, I was writing API queries against this CRM I'd never even heard of before and gathering data and figuring out how their data structure worked and and integrating it with the other data. And so just for my ability to do that task, which is actually more of a technical task if you think about it, but it just sort of was sort of indicative of like, okay, this takes a thing that I would have had historically to hand off to someone else on the team. I can just sit down and knock it out and a lot faster than I thought. And that was kind of eye opening.
And that's really fascinating, right? Because I think that that's an amazing illustration of the notion that I have around the rise of the AI analyst powering a full stack expansion of the analyst skill set. And you just
Yeah.
illustrated the expansion to the left towards the technical
Yeah. Yeah.
aspects.
Yeah.
Where, I'm like you, I'm not an engineer. My technical skills are limited. I find myself being able to do things that I would not have been able to do technically. Doesn't make me a data engineer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes
Oh,
me
no,
a
exactly.
makes me a data analyst that can, solve some of their own issues occasionally, and
Exactly.
that's very
Y-
useful.
Yeah. So I think I see
I-
where you're headed here, which is the other direction, which is the
Yes.
analysis. Aha. Which what I'll
Yes.
say is I think I'm still waiting for that.
Okay.
I I will say that historically or up until probably a couple months ago, I was sort of not sure I believed AI would be capable of delivering actual analysis. Just because, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I actually, at this point, I'm starting to see a path, or I think I see a path that, okay, if you set things up a certain way, you can actually, and there's two parts to that. So there's progression of the AI industry itself, and the models are getting better and better, and the concept of leveraging multiple LLM agents for different parts of the problem is sort of becoming widespread in terms of its use, which is then allowing for better or less hallucinatory interactions or more fully featured interactions, which I think helps with analysis. So and then, you layer in sort of like we're all starting to understand some of the things required to deliver analysis around semantic layering, knowledge graph, things like that, then now I think, okay, I do see a path for an AI to deliver analysis, but I would say the lift to do it is a lot heavier than what most people think it is. And of course, we'll talk more about it. So that's why I would say my analysis aha is still coming, but I think I do think it's going to happen.
For analysis, I agree. It takes much more. I think that where it does help is for people who have maybe less of a easy way with storytelling, like people
Yeah.
who are able to put, to align the bullet points, but have a hard
Yeah.
time finding the way to wrap it up. For me, the way it really happened is with the floofies, my little characters
Yeah.
that help with sort of teaching LLM concepts and prompting concepts.
Yeah.
So when I came up with the characters, I decided sort of intuitively that they were going to represent the parameters in a latent space. That just seemed very obvious to me. But then I needed to create a very coherent framework that would map all the Floofy's features with ML concepts. Now, obviously, I could have talked to my CTO for 6 hours about that and verified, that everything made sense, but that was not a very good use of his time. And I think he probably would have quit at some point after a few hours of questions. But I was able to spend an entire weekend with, 3 different models and cross-check everything every single way to build a really complete mapping feature where like eyes are attention mechanism, ears are context window, the fur is spiky pre-training, the fur is smoothed out, post-training, like everything actually works so that I can build stories on it.
Mhm.
That would have been really impossible otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so we're going to talk about it, but I mean, that's probably one of my primary use cases around AI today for myself is like building knowledge or education for myself or collapsing knowledge into more useful chunks. So like conceptually, there's stuff that you sort of know about ish, right? Data warehouses or data
Mhm.
lakes, but it's sort of like, okay, like, the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, I keep seeing this term RAG, right? What is that? So of course I just went into a chat GPT and I said, okay, teach me about RAG. What is it? How does it work? And it walks you through and it's like, okay, I don't understand this concept. What does this mean? So now I build a set of knowledge so I can be conversational about, okay, what is that? And now today, well, now I take that concept and say, okay, well, that works pretty good for content, but RAG doesn't work well for data, for instance. So understanding like, okay, now take that concept a step further into, okay, the next step in the evolution, and then using AI to kind of um, create a more efficient learning curve for myself on stuff that I didn't know about before.
And I think, Michael, karma might have caught up with you because I believe that that makes you the quintessential AI analyst.
Don't you dare. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I know Tim will be pleased if that's
I'm
the
sure he
case.
will.
But
Tim, this one's for you.
but to your point though, I think the structure of performing analysis and when we think about AI, we think about, okay, can I let AI run an autonomous analysis from beginning to end? So from business question to insight or result or recommendation. And that's so that's what I mean about sort of an analysis aha is sort of like, can I set it to a task and it do that? Whereas most AI data tools are what I would call data retrieval tools. Well, they'll go in, get a piece of data and hand it back to you, which then assists you in your analysis, but doesn't actually conduct an analysis on your behalf. But AI is very helpful at the component parts, little chunks along the way. Like you talked about storytelling. One part of delivering an analysis is constructing the narrative around or how it will be understood or
Yeah.
accepted. And so like, as like say you're super strong with your statistical skills and you've done an amazing analysis with very detailed, an LLM is an awesome place to go validate how you want to present that information uh, to a business user, and even give it personas to say, here's kind of how these people are. You dump your analysis in, or whatever, and it'll come back and say, here's some bullets or ideas how to make it more succinct, how to make it more clear. This might be ambiguous to people. Like, there's all kinds of ways like AI will help with that. And on the flip side, you can have an AI do some of the structural thinking around the data as well. I mean, it can do things like write queries for you, write code for you, you know. So I think of AI as actually probably really good at things like, um, initial exploratory data analysis, just sort of getting an understanding of a set of data that you haven't really interacted with before. It can do a lot of that work up front, because there's a standard approach to it, and you can kind of set it up to run through those steps effectively. And that just fast tracks your own ability to work with that data. So there's use cases within analysis that LLMs are really great at. What is not quite there yet is AI running a whole analysis from beginning to end for you.
And on that point, I don't know that that necessarily is structurally possible, because I remember this very well. It was in April at Measure Camp New York. You and I were talking. Sorry, shameless plug. Measure Camp New York, the Measure Camp with the best pizza. Gotta do that, as a New Yorker.
Yeah, we won't talk.
um, Also, Measure Camp New York is actually in New Jersey. So it's really New Jersey pizza. But never mind, still the best. So you and I, we were talking about coding and analytics, and how software engineering was disrupted by AI. And you were thinking a lot about the difference between coding and analytics. And I was
Yeah.
just in the process of writing my articles about it. And I know you read those. And so I'm wondering kind of like where you are landing on where those two processes differ, and why maybe software engineers can run agents autonomously for more processes than necessarily we can in analytics, or at least currently.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to sort of what an LLM really is under the covers, right? It's a probabilistic engine that's trying to predict the right next thing. What's so great about text or coding is that it's discrete in terms of what comes out the other end can be interacted with and understood very quickly. In terms of software, it's sort of like, okay, all the software exists in a corpus, right? So the LLM is training on all of the instruction sets of software that it has access to. So it's gaining lots of knowledge and ability then to predict what should happen next in a piece of code. It can then go write code and then very quickly get feedback on, is it work or does it not work? Right? It's sort of it does or it doesn't kind of an outcome, which is amazing for a computer, because the computer gets that instant feedback and then can reinforcement learn against that to get better and better and better. So then, but in analytics, you have a more deterministic need, which is um, there is not multiple answers to the question. There's usually one answer to the question, or a direction that the question needs to go or not go. Because what's happened, what we're trying to do with data is interpret the real world, not write something that does or does not. Right. So it's a
Yes.
difference between probabilistic and deterministic kind of reasoning. And so an LLM itself is not good at that kind of deterministic outcome. And so it hallucinates, it makes stuff up. And that's not going to fly in a business context if you don't have a good way to kind of understand and kind of correct that as the AI tries to navigate through that setting. So if it goes and looks at your data and it decides it wants to just make up a number about revenue for last month, um, if you're not watching closely, you just might end up with something you didn't intend. So that's what I mean by when you ask it to do analysis, it's just not good at that.
Yeah, nobody needs approximative insights on maybe complete data, maybe not,
it's
maybe partially made
yeah,
up.
um, it's like directionally, sometimes data is okay directionally, but sometimes you actually need to really know. And uh, you just need, again, analytics and especially insights from data comes down to trust. It
Yes.
really does. Like if I'm a business owner or business decision maker and someone comes to me and says, I think we should do this because the data indicates it, every layer of that interaction has to do with trust. So, do I trust the data at the base level? Do I trust the analysis, or do I trust the analyst or the person delivering it to me? So
Can I
when
trace it?
yeah, in essence, it's sort of a human intuition level of traceability, or that trust level at every level of that, which is traceability, right? And traceability, in a technical sense, delivers back some of that trust, right? Because if I
Hmm.
can deliver observability and traceability through that process cleanly, then then I can prove that I didn't take missteps along that process, which makes a more trustworthy result. So, from a business decision making standpoint, that's a big deal because the more complex your question, the more nuanced, the more you're going to run into things like, I don't know if that's true. There's the famous Jeff Bezos thing is like, if your intuition about the business conflicts with the data, more often than not, you need to probe that data or that analysis more because your intuition is probably right. And so if a business user really, or business owner, or business leader really understands their business and how it works, more often than not, their intuition is probably more directionally good than whatever the
Yes.
analyst is coming up with. And that's what I mean by trust. It's like, is my intuition guiding me in a different direction, or is there alignment, or do I see something? And sometimes the intuition is off and you got to learn and grow. And so there's an opportunity for that. But again, that's all very esoteric for an AI to really get in the middle of. And I think that's
And
where the biggest difference between software and analysis really exists. And so people have written lots of articles, vibe coding is sort of what people call AI driven development. People have written articles about vibe analytics. Those people are completely wrong and terrible, and they should be ashamed of writing those articles. And um, that at the same time, I want to also just leave the door open that I said earlier. I do believe there's a path to doing analysis with AI. It's just that it's a lot harder path than people are letting on. Because today people are sort of like, drop an LLM on top of your data warehouse and just let the insights flow, and it's
don't,
complete baloney.
don't,
I
do
don't
not
know
do that.
if you want an explicit tag on this podcast, but that's where you'll get
Yes,
it from.
yes, we can get an. Please give us an explicit tag.
It's bullshit. It's just bullshit. It doesn't work like that. Okay.
It really doesn't. And so clearly, I mean, the only way to have trust in your data is to run code on data you actually host somewhere, right? This is the only way you
Yeah.
can actually trust your analysis. The other thing I think that is very different between analytics and coding, you touched on it, is in coding, you have unit testing, you have a yes or no, you have an acceptance, you have all of that. In analytics, we get an answer, we get 3 more questions. And
Mm-hmm.
we really are, as analysts, bringing elements of an answer to a person who will make a decision. That person has, as you mentioned, vast knowledge and intuition that is not in the data and cannot be captured in the data because, as you said, the data is by definition a model of reality. So it's a reduction of information.
Yeah.
We only have a certain amount of information in that data. And within the domain of that information, we are able to say certain things that are an element of a decision making by a person who runs a business. And our acceptance test is the person accepting the product of our analysis as something useful? Now they can make a decision based on it or not. It can be that decision, it can be another one. That's a different question, in my opinion. But do they at least accept the product of the analytics work as being a valuable piece of information? And that is a very subjective
Mm-hmm.
sort of unit test. or acceptance test. So I don't
Yeah.
really see how you can then run that into a process that will run something of any type of complexity without human checkpoints.
Well, I mean, I think the theoretically, what I think people think about it right now is that, there's sort of layers to it. So the base level is my underlying data, whatever that is. Then on top of that, a semantic layer that helps the AI kind of understand what that data means and how it's mapped. And then on top of that, maybe a knowledge graph that is connecting or allowing the AI to make connections between this data and other important data or contextually relevant data that might apply. And then a reasoning engine that allows it to kind of react to. So, like, let's take an example. If you said, um, hey, uh, this past quarter, conversions or revenue is down for paid search, right? So, as an e-commerce example where people come to your website, we acquire them through various means, paid search being one of them, and revenue is now down a little bit quarter over quarter. So you would do an analysis as a human against that, where you would first try to understand what is happening. Is that drop real? So you'd go in and do analysis to say, like, what is the difference level? Is it statistically kind of, um, is the variation enough that it's not sort of just normal, or is it actually lower than what we expected? Then you would drive down into the semantic layer, which we kind of cognitively hold sometimes in our heads, but basically down into, okay, so what's driving that? Like, let me drill into the different campaigns, the different things that are happening. And so you would then start to look at it across maybe three different um, perspectives. The first perspective being the channel itself, right? The marketing channel that's driving the acquisition. Like, what is the composition? What changes happened at that layer of people, of potential customers I was acquiring through that channel that were bringing to the website to potentially purchase? What differences happen there? Is there anything to that? The second layer would be maybe the website itself. Is the website Are there technical things with the website that may be affecting people's ability to make transactions from that specific channel? And then lastly, you probably also look at the products themselves, the merchandise, because maybe there are specific products that are bought on that channel that were low inventory and not available. And so we did not drive the revenue we thought we would drive because people could not purchase. So, like, all those three things is what you would look at as an analyst. Well, just what I've described, uh, a lot of AI tools do not have access to all three of those pieces of information at a given time, because typically we're driving AI in on some vertical piece of information. Maybe we're driving it in on the marketing analytics tool. Maybe we're driving it in on the product analytics tool or the website tool. Maybe we're driving it in on the merchandising or the inventory side, but we're usually not very good at driving it in all across all three simultaneously. And that's what I mean by a knowledge graph. Is you need to be able to connect those for the AI, so the AI can actually go in and ask those three questions about those three components to be able to come back to you with, okay, revenue is down for paid search and it's actually related to this. Otherwise, it's the classic, you know, the the guy searching for his keys under the streetlight, and they asked him, well, where'd you drop them? I think it's over there. Well, why are you searching? Because that's where the streetlight is. Well, the AI has no choice but to search under the streetlight. So if you only give it light in one area, it cannot search anywhere else. It has no knowledge. And so that's the thing, is we have to really conceptualize, like, well, what do you do when you do an analysis? You go and you bring all this other contextually relevant information about all these other things and other systems the AI may or may not have any visibility to. And so when I say that I believe AI can perform analysis in the future, it's only when you've done the work to think through that process and think about the knowledge required or the context required to basically run through that question and other questions of that sort, that you can then expose the AI to, that will allow it to give you those answers. So that's kind of where the tipping point will come.
So if you ever want a side gig as a product architect, you literally just described the architecture of Prism when you
Yeah.
did the semantic layer, etc. And I absolutely believe that that's the way to go, right? Is creating these connecting dots between the different tools that we use, because the tools are fine. We have good databases. We have good BI tools. We have good vertical products that can be AI augmented, and that's all fine. You do need to connect the dots with knowledge and context across the different tools that you use, and use natural language as an interface to communicate with them.
Yeah.
However, I do still believe that even by doing that, I'll give you an example with one of our design partners in e-commerce, actually. So they do functional snacks. It so happens that when you do functional snacks, the holidays are actually a down period for you because nobody wants
Mm,
functional snacks during the holidays. So, we get all of these contextual explanations about what the dips, etc., means, so that
yeah.
when we do analysis, we actually take that into account because we have the memory and context engine to do
Yep.
that. And all of those things are fantastic and great. However, they run out of stock relatively, at relatively unpredictable periods in time. And that information is not in any tool. Like, it just is not in the data,
Yeah.
any data. And so we can't know. We can't know from the data whether they're out of stock or not. My point is, I just really think that business is so complex, the
It
world is
is.
so complex, and the data analyst is a person who brings a support for a decision, for a business decision, with a data model that is as representative as possible of the world, however still limited. And realistically, you need to take that reality into account. You do need the human checkpoint in there.
Yeah. So I completely agree. Like, I don't think we're going to just have AI autonomously running all analysis. Like, there's going to always be human in the loop on that, because for lots of reasons, but primarily for that trust reason. In the same way that you just need somebody behind the wheel of a car, even if it can drive itself, today, the same thing. You just need a human in the loop on an analysis as well, because the AI can't do all the things a human can do through that whole process. Because the thing is like, what is the point of doing an analysis? Well, the point is to inspire or influence a change or a reaction or action against that analysis that is either continue, stop, or start. Well, what do we know about how people do change, right? So that's never going to be an AI that convinces someone to change. That is even more complex than analysis. So of course a human has to be involved, for all the reasons why influence is a thing that AI is probably not going to be able to really grapple with uh, for a long time. I don't even know. Like, that's way beyond my pay grade.
And so when you work with clients now, what type of requests do they have when it comes to AI and analytics? Is it about functionality? Is it about efficiency? Everything has to go faster because you use AI and it does everything. And so I only want to pay a tenth of the price because you 10x all of your analysts or whatever. Like, along which lines does this manifest in your client engagements? Like, that aspect.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, well, first off, it started coming up just in casual conversations with clients about, we're interested in this, or we're working on this, or we've got a company initiative around this, to try to drive efficiency. And so we aren't always, because of our work and our specialization, we're not always the first person our clients talk to about AI, but certainly, those conversations are happening on the side that where we work, because we're using AI day to day in our work more and more and more. We're very open with our clients about our use of AI and where we're using it and why. And we're also very open with them about where we should not be using it and why we don't use it in some places. Because not everybody has the same perspective because they read the article someone wrote about vibe analytics being a thing you can actually do. And it's just sort of like, well, you can't. And let me walk you through kind of like the thinking here and then show you where we can gain efficiency, where we can't. And ideally, like we've got a good partnership with our clients and we've got good trust with our clients. And so as an advisor, we're able to help guide that conversation. So I would say our clients, they're either pushing internal initiatives or they're planning to. Um, I would say personally, we don't have any clients today that are on the sidelines, right? No one is sort of like, we'll wait and see what happens. This whole AI thing, maybe it's a flash in the pan. I don't think any of our clients are there. Everyone is at least trying something, some more than others. Some have integrated AI already into specific functions. And it's kind of fun to watch the AI kind of grapple with business questions as they come in via a Slack channel and an AI bot that tries to go in and answer questions for the clients. And I read through those intently, both for my client's sake, but also for my own to understand like, yeah, how are we doing? And this is what's driving a lot of my perspective is when I watch some of these things happen in the real world, like what does the AI struggle with versus what doesn't it? And that's why like AI is amazing at data retrieval. If you need to know like how many units of that did we sell or how many leads came from this region, well, AI can go in and grab that piece of information out of the database for you super easy. And it's so great. And that's, I think, a great use case. And it's a nice compression of a challenge that we've had for many years with the quote unquote modern data stack, because SQL was a barrier to entry to the data itself for a lot of questions that didn't exist in a pre-existing dashboard or report. A business user was locked out of that data up until now. But now those business users are now back into that data so they can conduct some of their own analysis on the data because they're able to ask those questions. Now, that exposes again some of the challenges about that, which is people can go ask questions in different ways and there's semantic ambiguity, right? So
Yes.
the way you ask a question sometimes will determine what you get responses to. Now, a good AI agent assistant will go clarify the question effectively and be like, now, are you talking about this? Are you talking about that? And so they'll help the business user kind of drive the question down. But you do need to be aware that that can happen because someone might say like, well, I mean, give me a list of our best customers. All right. So that's a question that gets asked in a business probably all the time. What does best customer mean?
Yeah.
And so now we've driven right down into semantic ambiguity where the AI is going to either make a set of assumptions itself, or it's going to say, I don't know what you mean, drive that, or we have a semantic layer that defines that. So the AI will pick up that definition and drive forward with what the answer to that question is from the perspective of that. However, semantic layers are not universal because certain metrics or things like that differ depending on what department. So finance versus
Or
marketing
person.
versus operational. Well, hopefully there's some cohesion at some sort of functional level within the business, but certainly it's from the perspective of different departments or functions of a business, you're going to have different reasons. And so, hat tip to Cindy Howson from ThoughtSpot, who we had on our podcast recently, um, kind of identified that like you actually might need multiple semantic layers for a business to actually effectively work with your data.
I think you need a semantic layer that can hold the different definitions of the different businesses, the different functions, because all those definitions are legitimate. They're all
Yeah,
legitimate
that's
for
right.
their own purpose. It's not like somebody's
Exactly.
right and somebody's wrong. It's not like this is something that needs to be fixed. This is
Exactly.
structural.
Yes, exactly correct. And I think that's the oversimplification where usually we walk in, my perspective is much more on sort of the marketing and e-commerce side of the world. So I'm not a finance guy. So when finance people walk in the room, they have a perspective that's slightly different. And of course, over the years, I've learned sort of like where those might cross each other. And so I'm aware and cognizant and try to work to make sure there's good alignment. But if you don't know, you're just going to use your number. And then finance is going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not a good number.
Exactly.
And then you fight over it. And then you lose trust.
Mhm. And so you talked about the technical and tool side of things. How do you see clients' organization change as they consider more of AI from a people perspective? Are they expecting people to upskill? Are they looking for certain types of skills in people to hire? What do you see happening?
Yeah, I think this one is a bigger hurdle because again, change, right? It's all change that people need to go through. I think probably most of your listeners are familiar with that MIT report from this past summer that kind of indicated how a large number of AI initiatives were kind of not proceeding to plan or failing within large organizations, and there was challenges with implementing them. And I think that speaks to the process side of this. And I think that's where process and training is crucial. Any AI initiative, you can't just sort of throw it out there and be like, we got an AI tool, go nuts. It takes a bit more of that because it's like, well, what should you use it for? How should you use it? What is it good at? Because especially when it comes to trustworthy data and insights, you still have to have a human in the loop to kind of like guide that. But I think that's where I think for our clients, they're starting to grapple with that or thinking about, okay, yeah, how do we need to upskill or think about how to roll things out? But it's no different, to be really blunt, than any other rollout of any other initiative or process change. It's just AI now. That's all it is. But, you think about adoption or execution against any new major shift in how you do things. Um, Change management's been a thing for a long, long time. Um, so
I
we
agree that it's really
should have,
just a shift.
yeah, it was just addressed
It's
it
a
the exact
fast
same.
one.
It's, yeah, that's challenging because it is crazy, crazy how fast it's moving. And I think more than anything, that just leads people to feel anxiety about how quick
Yeah.
they should be moving. I don't think, I, personally, I think people should take the stress off. But I do think that's part of the intensity is the expectation level, right? So because it's so, like we talked at the very beginning, like the ground shifted with ChatGPT 3 and has just kept shifting faster and faster. And Gemini 3 just came out and it's a phenomenal um, LLM, and the way it works is amazing. And ChatGPT 5 and like the mode or the pace of change is rapid and advancing so quickly. So the pressure is intense in two directions. From the top, right? CEOs are famous for writing these memos where we're like, every initiative is now an AI initiative. If you didn't solve it with AI first, it's not approved. Like, everyone's saying that from the very top, like we're going to be an AI first company now. It's like, well, okay, great. Like that's good because on one level that is leadership and that's pushing down to say everybody really think about how you're gonna push this forward, drive efficiency, drive gains. Here's the problem: the feedback up from the trenches is this stuff doesn't work. Because when you start to put AI in place to try to do these things that we think it can do, and so most data leaders are somewhere crushed in the middle of like, we've got to do AI initiatives. And the analysts are like, yeah, but this is bull crap. Like, it doesn't work like this. There's still lots of problems. So in the middle, you're still having to figure out, okay, how do I make inroads on something that's a mandate while at the same time not being realistic about what's actually possible.
That's really what I feel. It's like the expectations that organizations have currently for head of analytics, whatever the title is, right?
Yeah.
Just aren't really quite realistic. And I think for several reasons. And one of the reasons is that software engineering has been really disrupted by AI. Like
Yeah.
really, that
Yeah. I
profession
agree.
has been absolutely disrupted. We talked about this a lot. We've seen how difficult it was to hire anybody who had any experience with AI a year ago in software engineering. Today, we don't have that problem at all anymore. Everyone, every
Hmm.
software engineer uses AI
Yeah.
and
Yep.
uses AI a lot, right? And there is always this sort of notion, yes, but analysts do code, which is not untrue, right? We write
Yeah.
code. However, the process, the workflow is entirely different. That's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to explain, I think. Explaining that software engineering has a linear workflow with a deterministic acceptance test, and that analytics has a iterative circular workflow with a not very deterministic
Yeah.
acceptance
Well,
test.
and context is governed strictly within the requirements and the code itself. So
Yes.
you don't have external context you have to maintain except within the window of the work you're doing right then. I'll also say this, like you're absolutely right. Software engineering has massively shifted over to AI, but also LLMs and the way they work in software engineering has shifted a great deal at the same time. You, if you go and work with, Codex or Claude or even now Gemini, when you sit down, like at first, when you sat down with those and said, all right, I want to write a piece of software, and you drilled that into whatever, CLI or whatever you're using, the AI would jump in and be like, all right, let me take a whack at that. And it would just start going, and it would try to write you what you thought, what it thought you wanted. Now those tools go through a development process because it needs to. So the AI takes what your prompt and it says, okay, let me go write up a plan. Now let's review the plan together, make sure that looks good. And then, okay, now I'm going to fire up agents to start writing code against this plan and then checkpoints along the way. So software development also has a process that AI has started to use. And so like when we start working into multi-agent structures, software development like was one of those use cases that was really easy to latch onto for AI, but like the first go around where the AI agent just sort of took its first swing of the bat and just hoped for the best, you heard all kinds of horror stories about how it just decided it's deleting the database because that's what it thought it should do. And you're like, I just destroyed half my code base of the thing it just wrote because it didn't think about what it was doing. So now I got to start over again. And so driving efficiency through that process, well, there was a bunch more work. So the iterative cycle is very quick. And so software development today, and again, I'm not a software developer or engineer by any means, but I've just sort of watched how that process has shifted where it used to be the user had to think through all the structure and planning. Now the AI can participate in a lot of that structure and planning. In fact, does it because it produces better outcomes. And so there's all those things are happening. Now, what I'd like to think is there are a set of discrete things so personally, I believe that most analysis follows patterns. Now we've never written them down like we did for software, like design patterns in
Yeah, I
software.
would
Like
agree
there's,
with that. That is true.
but
Uh,
most things follow a set of steps that you actually could theoretically follow. We just never have. Um, we may at some point in the future, but that means that if we can define those patterns effectively, then we can get AIs to help us run through those patterns effectively. So that's why I believe analysis can happen with AI at some point. And again, that's we're not there yet.
No, but I believe that's true. And that's what we do when we fine tune agents. We
Yeah,
we mimic the thought process of an analyst in a certain context
yeah,
and the decision points. And so, what are your decision branches? Where would you go? How does that tree look like? And that's obviously very specific training for an LLM. But
yeah.
regarding context, I remember this quote from the Analytics Power Hour that kind of really struck me as interesting. I wanted to ask you about that ever since. So you said about an organization, they now have people full time whose job is to ensure that the AI is getting fed the right information. So basically the right context, right?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if you can talk about this organization without, giving any names or whatever, but what was the thought process like? What is this?
Yeah, I mean, it goes right into the semantic ambiguity thing that we talked about before, which is how do we supply the AI with the appropriate context so it can be effective at applying data to a business question so that it can deliver a high quality result and or shepherding it along that path for various functions. So, that's people's jobs are sort of shifting into sort of that coach slash mentor role for the AI to kind of guide it through the thinking of like, okay, look, this, and this. And and so that's sort of stuff we're seeing like people do kind of in real time because the human needs to be able to monitor and kind of tweak it because at first, like at the very beginning of this, it was sort of like a whack-a-mole with hallucinations, right? It was sort of like, oh yeah, here's what you need to know. And you're like, wow, that is made up completely. Like, no, you can't do that. And that's why like human in the loop is always going to be a part of the process for analytics, for probably anything AI does that drives an outcome on the business side. A human's got to be the sort of the last gate to say like, yep, this is right, this is not right. And you know, again, I have these thoughts about how that might play out over the long term. But in my mind, I kind of use the Industrial Revolution as sort of a way of thinking about it, which is, you know, um, everyone used to make things artisanally and then sell them. And then we made factories where you made one part of it or managed a machine that made it. And so if you think about like knowledge work or things like that, like data analysis, whatever, the things we all do in business today in a service economy, AI will start to do the parts of it and will sort of take on the role of managing the machine that's stamping out whatever the part of the process it's running. Um, I don't know how people feel about that, but like that's sort of one way to sort of conceptualize what might happen with AI over the long term. So if you think about that from a analysis perspective, you kind of think about, okay, then my job isn't to necessarily be the artisan creating the SQL and writing the instructions into the code and aligning the data or setting up beautiful charts and graphs. That will be the AI going forward. My job will be one layer above, managing the orchestration of all those things to make sure we actually get the right quality level at the end of the process. So in a certain sense, like you think about our role is sort of going to shift towards a more supervisory versus detailed role, if you will.
I would agree with that with one nuance. I don't think that the fact that the role is supervisory means that it is less detailed. Because
That's fair.
yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
going to
because
voice it. Because
yeah,
in
no, that's
order
good.
to correctly supervise, you do need to know how to do the details yourself and understand the details.
Yeah, this is sort of an existential question that I hear raised about sort of like, okay, if AI is doing all this stuff, how will the next generation of analysts become knowledgeable at that level of detail if they're never personally putting their hands in it and doing that analysis from soup to nuts themselves? Like it's quite easy for me to envision handing off parts of an analysis to an AI, but it's because I've been doing analysis for 20 years. So I have a pretty good set of
Yes,
instincts for what's good and what's bad on the other end of it. And this is also why I say outcomes in AI are largely driven by the expertise of the prompter at this point. Um, and I'm not
I agree.
sure how that will change over time.
And so from your point of view of business owner, how is AI changing the way you think about stacked analytics from a positioning point of view, an offering standpoint, a staffing standpoint, like all the different aspects that you have to think about as a business person of how you position yourself in this extremely fast shifting environment?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, we were created on the principle of helping companies close this data to value gap that I've just observed over and over and over again. And as I talk to leaders, I hear it again and again and again. And so that was the thing we started at Stacked Analytics to kind of address. That hasn't changed at all. It's still true and it'll still be true into the future. because the nature of tech is that there's sort of a never-ending stream of vendors who convince you that if you buy this tool, it will deliver value, as if there's sort of like a magical step one, skip step two, three profits, right? So it's
Yes,
sort of like,
that
okay,
is very true.
we're a step two company. We
Mm.
help figure out what that middle piece is to drive those outcomes. So the closure of that gap as it relates to sort of talent and technology, people are going to help do that. They're doing a great job at that. And there's, a huge flywheel of companies that are driving AI really effectively. I think the talent and people and the process and culture parts of that are where we'll continue to find opportunities to work with companies. I don't think AI changes any of that, except in context, we're starting to engage clients on the AI part of data and analytics more effectively, or more and more.
And I imagine those clients expect you to have expertise in AI. And I remember about a year ago, you told me that a team member and yourself coded a tool in like an afternoon that would audit, I think it was auditing clients' websites. I honestly don't remember the details. I imagine that you've done more of this and that you're building this, like that you have like a sort of concerted effort to build that expertise.
Yeah, so it's in our DNA, like, because it's my company, like, we're gonna run it the way I act, which is I can't not learn new things. So
I
yeah,
agree with that. You
we're
should run your
continu
company the way you act.
well, it's if you're the leader, it's gonna fit your personality one way or the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, we of course continue to build tools using AI, and we use AI to develop those tools first and foremost. But we're always looking for ways to be more efficient. Like, hey, how can we streamline this testing? Because again, efficiency drives down to value opportunity creation. So because there's things I'd like to be doing value wise that we can't do today because we're stuck at this level with this company. So my perspective on analytics is you, you walk into a company and there's an entry point. There's a point at which there is a need and a gap that the client needs your help with. And so you apply your expertise there. It's not the end. That's the beginning. There's a process we want to follow to drive to value, and that isn't in that first project. It may be 5 projects later, it may be a year and a half later, but I'm trying to go there from day one. Whether the client knows that or not, I have a perspective, and that's part of what makes stacked analytics what it is. We're trying to go there. AI is just going to be a tool we use to go there as to collapse that timeline as quickly as possible. So we are going to use those tools both internally and with clients wherever possible to do that. In fact, um, just in a couple of weeks, we're going to have our first Stacked Analytics AI hackathon, where we're having a company offsite where we're going to spend 3 days just doing AI use cases together and having fun. Because
That's super cool.
yeah, because it's what we need to do. We're going to invest behind, like, not just sort of like all of us sort of one-offing it, but also coming together to collaborate and see what sparks and what tools and ideas can be built from that. And I think that's probably like it's important for us to do. And I think, any company probably would have some fun doing it. And it's kind of neat too, because obviously those kinds of things just sort of, I always find them really fulfilling from the perspective of also like interacting with all of our people, and also just the ideas that spark from it, and the direction that comes from it as well.
And so for the, the analysts that are listening to us, can we look at this from your point of view as an employer? And how about the skill sets you are looking for in team members? How has that changed from, say, a year ago? And what would you say to somebody today about what they should consider upskilling in?
Yeah. I mean, at the most foundational level, I don't think about skills. I think about personality and aptitude, in that a skill can be learned, a perspective cannot be, or traits cannot. So like a great analyst is insatiably curious, always learning, and lazy enough in a good way to automate repeatable processes. I don't think any of that changes in an AI world. I think that just comes to the forefront. In fact, I think those are ideal qualities for AI also. Um, I would say, like I talked about, like I do think in the data world, we're going to be challenged to kind of raise our perspective out of some of the day-to-day minutia. Like, people have made careers just implementing, Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics for companies. That's great work. But what we're going to find is that there's going to be companies that emerge. There already are companies doing this, by the way, like Moonbird or Tag Assistant, um, that are creating AI solutions to sort of these sort of lower level use cases that used to be sort of the bread and butter of people in our industry. Now, the people that are really amazing at that, they're still going to be high value for the same reason you just described. Their expertise will help drive amazing outcomes, even leveraging AI. But our role in the process is going to go up a level, and we'll need to embrace that. We need to embrace sort of okay, I need to govern the process and the results, not just like, did this tag get deployed on this page and is it firing correctly? Like that used to be a big part of our job. Now it's going to be a teeny part because AI is going to do most of it. And then, or, whether it's build out a dashboard or report, maybe that was a big part of somebody's job. Now it's just going to be a little part. And they're going to spend the rest of their time thinking, is this the right information for this dashboard? Is this leading people on the right narrative journey to think about what this dashboard is talking about? So it's sort of going up a level, because if you change your perspective on, this dashboard is good, but I think it needs to be changed this way and that, okay, write the prompt. The AI will deliver a new dashboard in 5 minutes, and you review it and then push it out to the rest of the team. So those are the kinds of things that would have been like, oh, that would have been a 2-week process of
Yeah.
meetings and approvals and those kinds of things. Well, now it's a 5-minute updated prompt, and we roll it out. And if somebody doesn't understand what you did, they don't have to ask you. They can be like, okay, let me open this up in AI and ask, all right, I'm seeing some new metrics here. Help me understand what these metrics are. Sure thing. These metrics mean this, this, and this. And here's what it means in context and the relationship in this dashboard and how you can read it and think about it. We used to do that manually.
Yes. Yes, we did. And what would you say is sort of things for people to look out in job interviews, in job, descriptions? That I'll tell you what I see, and then tell me if you see something similar. So for one, when you look for AI analyst, I see a lot of job descriptions that are describing this like be all person who will set up AI infrastructure, work with Bedrock, maybe train some AI models on the side, and also do dashboards.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, and be a data scientist.
Yeah.
All of that, right?
So this reflects a lack of sophistication, right, at
I
the
agree.
market level.
I
So
agree. It's just a lack
you,
of maturity.
yeah, that's really all it's reflecting, is because, when someone sits down and says, okay, we've got problems we need to solve, go hire somebody who can set up a data warehouse, build out ETLs, and also deliver insights to the business. Okay, that exists in one person, maybe 1 out of 100 times, maybe
Yeah,
1 out of 1,000
maybe.
times, maybe. Like, I know I've developed talent and thought about this for years and years and years. And even way, way back in the day, I mean, I interviewed for job roles where there was sort of a list of things, and I would be like, hey, listen, I want to be very transparent with you. This thing you've put on here, that's not a strength of mine. If that's a big concern, like, I don't want us to move forward in the process and waste everyone's time. And literally got told, like, yeah, don't worry about it. We threw a lot of stuff against the wall just to see what people would come back with. Like, okay, come on.
Yeah, yeah,
That's it's not good or bad, but obviously that has downstream effects, which it
it
creates
does.
this sense in people that they have to be able to do everything, which is just never going to happen. B, for AI specifically, it creates a sense in people that is sort of like still buying into this magical solution concept of, and again, that's what I mean by lack of sophistication. In the data and analytics space and in an AI, we're simply just not very sophisticated yet And as that sophistication increases, you will see job descriptions get tighter and more distinct and stronger, I hope. But but I would say, like, in the data space, we still have some magical thinking about what we think one person can fulfill, or what roles we expect someone to do, within the context of data and analytics. Sometimes that's just going to have to slowly change over time. Um, and what's interesting is I don't see a lot of job descriptions where AI is at the center of it yet. At least for analysts and data, sort of data analyst types of roles. But I do think that's changing. And certainly, I do think every analyst worth their salt is using AI in some context, at least individually at this point, just based on sort of my anecdotal understanding of what people are out there doing. When I talk to people, like, they're leveraging AI day to day, um, even without necessarily like a company wide mandate. Like, individually, they're kind of thinking about and how to do that, or what they should be doing, or how it helps with this different part of their job, or those kinds of things. Um, and I think that's probably really important, because eventually their company will be using it or attempting to use it more broadly. And so individually, you should be trying to skill up there, even if your job isn't requiring it of you. But yeah, I think as time goes on, my hope is that we'll get more proficient as an industry at being more specific about what's reasonable for people to be able to consume. Like, usually you're not going to be an amazing data engineer and also an amazing communicator of insights, or a great data scientist and a narrative data storyteller. Um, you can be a great analyst and not be a great software engineer. I don't know. Like, there's lots of different ways that this could kind of pull apart.
And the other thing that I see is because there's a lot of push to drive efficiency everywhere, right? Across the board, with
Yeah,
these
yeah.
like I actually see a lot of shadow, I wouldn't say shadow IT, shadow data team sort of roles popping up, like in business unit type of shadow analytics roles.
Yeah, I think this is driven primarily by asymmetry and progression, departmentally, a lot of times within
Hmm.
companies. So one department needs to move forward in a priority queue that doesn't evaluate what their needs are against other needs of the business. And so it crops up where, in the short term, they've got to go find someone to kind of drive this forward, whether it's not part of, like, let's say, the more broadly structured data and analytics org. It's not super ideal from a governance perspective or a process perspective for that to happen, but it's totally something that's been going on for pretty much forever. Um, and it's certainly more and more, in the last 10, 15 years, as, um, like, I, there's sort of cyclical natures to a lot of this stuff, but I think
There is, yes.
the fact that there's a speed and a demand is driving that asymmetry harder now, right? So I need to have done this yesterday. Every department feels that pressure because of
Hmm.
AI. And at the same time, our processes are kind of stuck in sort of a prior era, which means we can get to you in maybe 6 months to a year. Um,
Yeah.
so then, well, as a business leader, I'm like, well, what are my choices? Okay, you know what? Let me go find a contractor or a consultant or an employee that I can bring in under my team and have them start running this stuff.
And so if you were like a hands-on practitioner in digital analytics today, faced with the changes that we just talked about and the speed of those changes, the need to upskill, the complexity of the job landscape, etc. What would today Michael say to operational analyst Michael, as your best advice?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, I am still hands on with data today. Like, I still, like,
True.
I still get into the weeds a little bit. Whenever I do an analysis that works well, I'm like, yeah, the old guy still got it.
I know it's great, right? I've got exactly the same thing.
But with AI, I think what I think about a lot is I use it to upskill all the time. So I talked earlier about how there was concepts I was hearing about that I needed to get more educated on that I wasn't super educated on. And so I use AI to actually drive that upskilling. So I think that's first and foremost a great tool to like use AI to teach yourself AI. Like that's the thing you ought to be doing because there's all kinds of things you can potentially do. Um, so just use that every day to drive into a concept. I mean, with Gemini, you can do all these amazing things, but one of the cool things you could do is just create flashcards on any topic. So you can just be like, okay, well, today I want to learn about, this statistical concept or this thing, and be like, okay, write me a research paper and then build me some flashcards. Well, that's
That's very cool. I have done a lot of research papers, never thought about doing flashcards.
yeah. I mean, it's just a way to like sort of
Yeah,
drill or
that is
bring
great.
knowledge to you in a different format that might be more consumable. But again,
Mhm.
like there's all kinds of ways to do that. Like with Notebook LM, you could dump documents in there and turn it into a podcast, like
Yes.
any way
Very
that you
enthusiastic
learn.
podcast.
Yeah, it's not like the best, but if you're a more auditory learner,
Mhm.
well, then
Yeah,
you
it's great.
take those papers and then like there you go. So there's some ways to do that. And then even in practical experience, like there's so many tools out there that are sort of ramping up. It's like go build a data set and get into those tools. A lot of them have free versions that you can use. And so
Yes.
go start using them. And so that you just get a taste of what's happening to drive and build perspective. So that's kind of what I would say. That's what I'm doing,
Yeah,
and
I
that's what
think
I
the
would
one
say to
thing you
myself.
can't do today in an interview is not have an opinion on AI and not have experience with AI. That is just not really an option.
Yeah, I think you absolutely have to say, like, here's what I'm doing with AI, or here's how I'm leveraging it. Here's my perspective on where it's going. Right or wrong, I think you got to have a take on it for sure. I don't think
And
sitting on the sidelines is an option.
And so, in a world where analytics agents can handle longer and longer workflows with limits, but still longer and longer, more complex workflows, I see an evolution of the analyst role from an operator of platform to more of an orchestrator and architect of workflows, where the AI agents ask the analyst for checkpoints, and the analyst role is to architect the work, the steps, verify the results, more than it really is to design and execute every step of the analysis. What is your take on the future of the analyst role in that perspective?
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable to assume that we'll continue to make progress, much like we talked about earlier with software development, where initially it was um, write a prompt and the AI runs off and starts trying to write code right away. It's sort of what we're doing with a lot of data with AI right now, where we write a prompt and the AI runs off and writes SQL against the database and tries to pull something back for you. Right? It's a one step process that has data retrieval capability, but not much else. As we start to build out the process and understanding, then we'll be able to run layers of agents or AIs against each of those steps of the process in a good order that will drive the ability for that to happen, which is exactly what happened with software development.
Yeah.
The process started getting incorporated into the agent. So today we might ask an AI um, uh, data AI, what's going on with this? And the AI will just go grab the number and bring it back and be like, I think this is what's going on. But tomorrow it might say, all right, let me do some research into all these different areas that contextually I know are relevant to the thing you just asked. You mentioned earlier seasonality. It could be, product. It could be acquisition channels. It could be any of these different things that might affect how this data may shift. And it's going to go out and sort of think about, okay, first, let me plan out all the different ways that I should look at this data and then bring it back to you and give you the ability to sort of say, okay, go further here. Okay, dig into that. And it goes in and starts doing that. So as time goes on, we'll start to see the same things emerge. It'll take time, and the challenge is uh, different than software in that with software, again, the answer is one answer: it works or it doesn't work. right? It's sort of, we got the right result, the test ran successfully, and we're ready to push that code into production. In analytics, it's more nuanced in that it's like, I like the result or I don't like the result. Or as a business user, my intuition tells me something different, so I don't trust the result. So I have like a more complex approval loop. So that will continue to fight us. And then the other thing that is just frankly, not appreciated enough is the level of quality in the data is the thing that will stop most companies from making good progress here. Conceptually, this
Absolutely.
is not hard to, um, conceptually, this isn't hard to kind of envision, but realistically, just a lot of companies struggle to like maintain good quality data and
Data
traceability,
quality is
observability.
always the main hurdle.
Yeah. And so that kind of thing, there's great use cases for AI to even help with that.
Oh, yes.
I actually think a great use case for AI right now is like, like I said, I think earlier, exploratory data analysis. So
I agree.
just set up the AI to run through those steps. It's a good set of steps. It's discrete. You can kind of just say like, okay, what's this data? What do I see in the data? What is the structure of the data? What patterns are in the data? What potential first set of hypotheses about this data? And so just anytime I work with a new data set, there's a set of things I do to try to understand what I'm seeing. And then that allows me to build a contextual baseline that then I can lift into that data set into other analysis or business questions that get provided. So, just those kinds of things like that. Well, what if an AI could just run that process for you? That'd be a nice time saver for anybody who's onboarding to a data set they've never worked with before. Um, just have that available to people and be like, okay, here's kind of how the data looks. Here's kind of the averages. Here's how the ranges work. Here's some of the error rates. Here's some of the outlier structures, all the things we do with EDA. Um, AI could do all of that today. So that would be something anybody could set up and start doing right now.
Yeah, that is an excellent use case for AI. And this has been an absolutely amazing conversation, Michael. Thank you. I'd love to sit here with you for another 3 hours and hash this out. I basically started this podcast, like the Analytics Power Hour is basically, the concept of the lobby bar, right? The conference lobby bar and having a
Yeah,
drink at the bar and hashing things out. Um, we're too old to drink. And I don't want to travel that much anymore. So I was like, okay, so how about I just invite all of my friends to one-on-one conversations on a podcast and we can hash this stuff out.
I love it.
Yes. So,
Well, thank you.
so thank you for doing this. It was really great. I don't know if you want to tell people where they can find you, plug anything you want shamelessly,
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the internet on LinkedIn a little bit here and there. I write some articles on Medium, and I've got a website, stackedanalytics.com, so you can always reach out to me there. But um, I will also say, let me just turn it back on you just a little bit, is we first started talking about this a while back, and your company, Ask Why, was the one that I first targeted as saying, okay, they're the ones thinking about this the right way because of the way you thought about how to construct the performance of analysis in the context of the analyst driving the AI through the process. And so I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to you too, because a lot of my thinking actually kind of in parallel, but also driven by some of the things that we've talked about before. Like, I feel like you Ask Why was getting it right before a lot of other people were. So you should be
well,
proud of that.
that's a big compliment. Thank you, Michael.
Well, skate to where the puck is going is the hockey phrase, which I think is pretty relevant, which is sort of like, okay, don't just build what everyone else is trying to build the thing where it's actually got to end up. And I feel like that was kind of what it made Ask Why stand out to me initially,
No, I
was
definitely have
that
opinions
perspective.
about that, and obviously, having been a hands-on analyst for decades, um, you just don't forget that. You don't forget the hours days,
Yeah.
months spent fiddling with problems and in the details and fixing things and talking to clients and working through the hard problems. You don't
It
forget that.
it changes you,
It
and
really does.
hopefully for the better, but sometimes for the bitter, So
I mean, look, I came back to it. What can I say? I think
yeah.
it's when it's part of your identity, for your identity. Data is really very special, right? It's a passion. Like
Hmm.
people who love data, it's something very specific. And if it's part of your identity, you might as well embrace it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, for everybody listening, you can hear more from Michael and his co hosts Tim, Mo, Val, and Julie on the Analytics Power Hour podcast, which is basically the gold standard for real talk about what's actually happening in analytics. If you're not listening to the Analytics Power Hour, you should. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And if you want to work with Michael and the team at Stacked Analytics, well, they're actually the ones making this AI analyst thing work in production. We'll have their details in the show notes. And Michael, I have to steal your Analytics Power Hour sign off here because it's just too perfect. The bots can analyze a lot these days. They can crunch numbers, spot patterns, maybe even write baby songs for your kids, but they can't replace what we do. So whatever challenges the rise of the AI analyst throws your way, we'll keep analyzing.
Absolutely.
And so that's it for this episode number 4 of Knowledge Distillation. If today's conversation about context engineering and wider fundamentals matters hit home, we're working on similar problems at Ask Why. Visit Ask Why, try Prism. Thanks for listening. And remember, bots process data, AI analysts create understanding. Thanks to Tom Fuller for the editing magic on this episode. If you want to work with Tom, head to askwhy.ai and check out the show notes for his contact info.